Hey Cal, how you doing, man? Thank you for joining the show.
I'm glad to be here, man. Always excited, and it's a pleasure to chat with you. And I'm really hoping to give some people some ideas today and hear about some of my training methods that I've come up with. And I appreciate you giving me that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't say how I actually found out about you, because I've already touted your name on this show, probably like 3 or 4 different episodes. I was training for like a modified decathlon. So it's for like weekend warriors like myself. It's for charity. And it's a cool event because it's like a modified NFL combine mixed with some of the traditional track events, right? So they don't let folks like myself throw a javelin, but we get to do like the 40-yard dash, the 400, and there's a strength component. So you do like bench and pull-ups, and then you also do like a 500-meter row all in one day. So it's pretty taxing.
Sure.
And I had a phenomenal high school track and football coach. His name's Judd Hunter. Shout out to Judd. He was a long jump national champion in college. He's just absolute stud, and he loves this stuff. And I was like, Judd, I'm trying to get back in shape. I was like, do you have any recommendations for a guy like myself? And he was like, you got to look up Cal Dietz. He's like, look up what he's doing with triphasic training. I've got all my high school kids doing it. He's like, the results are phenomenal. So that's actually kind of how I found out about you. And I was so excited because stopped playing college. My last year of college football was 2009, 2010. I should know that. And so I was like, well, not that much could have changed, but let me just kind of see what's out there. And when I picked up Triphasic Training and I started reading through it, I was like, holy shit. I was like, where was this when I was playing?
Right.
So I've had an absolute blast, man, reading your stuff. And I've gotten a couple of your books, and I'll let you talk here in a second. But what I want to say is I appreciate how applicable and how digestible you make what could be really complex concepts.
Thank you. I just, you know what? Well, and I didn't share everything, obviously, and people think I'm triphasic, but when you read all my manuals, I've made 8 of them, right? And maybe another book in the future. You're just like, and I have, honestly, in my head, I have a number of books laid out, but will I get to them? I don't know. I'm a busy coach, right? That's what I do. So I'm not interested in writing books. However, I do realize that this stuff needs to get out to people. So that, I hate to, honestly, I just had a coach from Korea, and he lectures all over Korea for coaches, and his basic foundation is triphasic, right? Yeah. So, I have coaches all over the world emailing me all the time saying, hey, thank you. What triphasic is, and it's like I have, sure, I'm the author, sure, I kind of came up with it, but ultimately it's accumulation of thousands of athletes on an experimental basis, right? And then probably 30 full-time coaches that have worked with me as my assistants, and then hundreds of interns.
Yeah.
To help build what I've done today. And I'm not just triphasic, right? Like you read my speed manual and you see those spring ankle, and we got to talk about those. Those are the most
absolutely
things, but we'll get to that, right? But you're sitting here, you're going and like, I'm just fortunate that, honestly, I think it's one of the most widely used concepts in the world for sports right now, sports training. And it's not a program. That's what people understand. Like your high school coach, he has his own program. He just slid the concepts into it, right? Yep. Let's be honest. And that's what makes it unique. I did it backwards. I did it forward. I did it many ways. And I was doing it probably 18, 19 years ago.
Wow.
I didn't even give it a name until about 9 years ago.
No kidding.
Yeah. And then or 10 probably. And then the book came out, which made it public. And it was hard, right? I even started lecturing on it, and people just didn't get it. And I'm like, all right. Some people did, but some people weren't so sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm just fortunate that, knowing what's happened for me is that it's introduced some pretty elite coaches to, right? So, literally last summer, I think I had 4 coaches from outside the country visit me. Oh, and cool. Then they go, yeah, what about this? And I'm going, oh, okay, yeah, this is a real deal. And then he give you a different thinking. And, so what Cal Dietz comes up with is not necessarily what Cal Dietz mind comes up with, right? Honestly, I have a formula for how I come up with all this stuff.
Okay.
And it's pretty simple. I literally question everything I do.
Yeah.
Okay. And when I question everything I do, it creates problems I didn't know I had. And then I make solutions. And that's simple. So I question everything I do.
Yeah.
Which creates problems I didn't know I had. And then I make solutions. And those solutions are creative sometimes. Sometimes they're terrible.
Yeah.
But then I get to better solutions.
I say yeah, not like I know your solutions are terrible.
Right. But no, you see the end product of those solutions, right? You see the 4 of the 100 solutions that were bad. You only see the good 4, right? So, you know, I mean, I sat here and people think you're mine. I'm like, yeah, you don't want to know my mind. Like, but I do have good days when I say that. Like, there's days where there was one day a few months ago before the virus struck, and I read something at like 7:30 in the morning, and I ran to the back room, and I didn't have any athletes. This was a Thursday because we got a game Friday, and I had nothing really. That particular day, everyone's healthy, didn't have any rehab. So then what happens is at 5:30 in that room, I had 3 grease boards filled up, all my notes, 2 laptops open, and I realized I hadn't ate or drank yet. Right? And those are the days I live for.
The beautiful mind.
Right?
Type. Yeah, exactly.
And you're just going, and I got into some stuff, right? And you're just going, man, if almost like 2 or 3 days a week I could do this, you know, but like coaching gets in the way of that sometimes too, you know, because you just can't do it. Like you got 35 athletes coming in throughout a 4-hour period, and you just can't do that. So those are the things.
And I'd love to ask you too, your approach, because one of the things that I get from your reading is, one, a lot of what you're doing is grounded in a tremendous amount of research. But what is also really interesting, and you already kind of touched on it, was it appears like there's a ton of experimentation happening. So when you question things, I guess, you know, what is your approach to then trying to validate them or disprove them or I guess just challenge them?
Well, when you say research, yep, I'll read the research, but then the researchers, I mean, they don't have the application that I have, right? So that's the big thing. That's the hard part, you know, where I think there's a little disconnect where I can sit there and the researcher, I'm going to look at this, I'm like, it won't work. There's just no way. I've never seen that concept. And so for example, and then I do have a lot of testing equipment that I can test stuff, right? And I may run a test on 30 people, and this is the particular case 26 times, you know, had great results. And I'm like, it's good enough for me. I don't have to validate it. Like if it gets me, and my number one job is to win medals, to win championships, right? That's all that I'm here for. And look, man, like once you get to a specific level, I'll give you an example of specificity.
Yeah, please.
But like once you get to a high level that I'm dealing with, what works for the rest of the world may not work for the best athlete in the world on a particular instance. Okay. So here was this caught my eye probably 8 years ago. A friend of mine now, Hank Krajinoff, he's a sprint coach from Holland. He won 18 Olympic medals, and on my opinion, he's one of the best coaches in the world.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And Hank told me a story where he was training Nelly Kuminati. I believe Nelly Kunin, but she held the world record, I think, in indoor 60 and was a world meter 60 indoor champion.
Oh, wow.
But in the 100 meters, she took second, I think, in 2 world championships or maybe in the Olympics too. So she would slow down, and she wasn't built to run top end speed. Well, so what he did was he broke up the 100 and he analyzed it. Okay, her first 100 is really good. Her second 100 is slower. He's like, okay, so he's a genius. He's like, I just checked my friends, you know, just threw some ideas out there. Yep. Increase a little bit of the drill work for this end of the 100 meter, the second phase. So here's how specific it gets. He did that drill work and she increased 0.2 in her second 50. But it was so specific, but yet it actually hurt her short sprint. So where she put 0.3 onto her first 50. So you see the interesting paradigm between elite people, and like, not that somebody that works at a desk can't be elite, right? You just maybe have never brought it out, or your responses. So when I say, you know, I research, but like you have to look, and Hank brought this to my attention. He was like, and I kind of never thought of it this way, but I did it. Every workout is like a biological experiment. So I have 20 kids in the room, and I have machines that measure heart rate variability, brainwaves. And there was times where I measured one person 7 times their heartbeat and their brainwaves, 7 tests on a heart rate variability device in one day. Because I watched the workout, pre-workout, I watched post-workout, I watched every 2 hours after that to see how the entire organism responded. And then I'm like, oh, this is how it responds. And that's great. Well, I did it again, and guess what? It was different.
No kidding.
Each
different
person. So
yeah.
So that's the beauty of this whole thing, is like, I don't think there'll ever be a final answer. But now there are workouts that you can do that, you know, theoretically most biological adaptations that are going to happen. But you just still don't know. Because the other variable is you had a long work day, and you're going to respond different to that workout than if you got up in the morning, had your coffee, we did a nice walk, got a good meal, and did your workout at 10.
Yeah.
Versus you do that workout at 5:30 at the end of a day, when I tell people like it was a bad day because, you know, it wasn't, all these things I dealt with weren't my fault, but they were my problem. You know what I mean? So it wasn't my fault, but it is my problem, right? That's a classic.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, you're like, that workout's terrible, and that workout's going to be harder for you. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
This is what we got to be aware of a little bit when you're dealing with people like with high schedules and stuff. Like, listen to your body a little bit to make sure that you don't. And then the hard part is if you kill yourself in that workout, the next day you go back to work, you're not going to be mentally as sharp either.
So that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up. And like I said, your books are great. And one thing that you kind of made reference to was that like stress is cumulative, and it's not just physical stress, right? It's like, relationships, work, school, whatever it may be, like all those things factor in to kind of like your current state. And I've tried to pay more attention to that. And to your point, like I try to be a little bit smarter about listening to my body. I mean, can you talk a little bit about like just to what extent it's all kind of tied together, and maybe even how you take that into consideration for some of the athletes you work with?
Yeah, really. I mean, so I do have devices and measurements, but nowadays I'm pretty good at guessing. And literally when I see an athlete walk in the door, I'll look at their posture, I'll look at their, movements, the way they're interacting, and it doesn't take me long. Because I know an athlete walk in, great posture every day, boom, boom, and all of a sudden it's just, even the walk's a little different, right? Yeah. So this is just 20 years of coaching, right? 24 probably. And I'm sitting there going, all right, something's not right. And I'm like, how are you today? And then that first interaction, oh, I'm fine. And maybe even sugarcoat it, but you're going, all right, something's wrong. And then you get to talking to him, and I broke up with my girlfriend or boyfriend. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's really stressful.
So, to that person at that time, it's a huge deal.
How about this one though? So it can go either way. I've had girls walk in all springy and jumping, like, I broke up with my boyfriend last night. And she's all dead, right? I'm like, well, that's a good thing then, right? You know what I mean? So it's really your interpretation of what happens.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Seriously, the people's interpretation. So when I say that, like breaking up with a boyfriend could be really good for you or really bad for you.
Right.
I've seen it. So, everybody, I think pretty standard, you got a sick kid at home. As a parent, you're stressed. You know what I mean? Yep. There's no doubt, right? Yep. Plus, selfishly, you didn't get any sleep that night, right? So, I mean, you didn't get any sleep.
You're describing me today.
Right? Right? So how do you combat that? Well, here's my thing. What I do with my elite athletes, and I think this is what everybody should do. So you're going to go to a gym, and let's say, what do you think the most workouts for your listeners are? Like, are they short lactate, CrossFit? It could be a number of things, right?
Yeah, it's a number of things. Yeah, I think the majority of people that I talk with, and now I'm thinking about my knucklehead friends, it's like they're getting in that hard hour at the gym.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So here's my thing, and it's in my Triphasic Tactical Manual for Special Forces operators that I wrote. And when they walk in, and they're the most stressed human beings on the planet. Okay.
Oh God, I can only.
Well, yeah, and I'll be honest with you, it's not even like what they do. And sure, there's live bullets running around, and things are happening. There's live drills and stuff's like crazy chaotic.
Yeah,
it's dealing with that because they operate that. A lot of them operate in that in a high level. They can manage that. Yeah. It's when they go home after a long day and they got kids and everything on top of that, right? And they're more stressed. I'm not saying the stress doesn't affect them, but then it starts to affect the home life, and that's how everything. So in that manual is the Triphasic Tactical we talked about was if you walk into that workout and you're stressed, and let's say it's at the end of the day, and you were going to do let's say you're going to do some, let's say a CrossFit workout where it's pretty intense and you're building a ton of lactate. At that point, you're going to beat yourself up is what I found. And it takes 2 to 3 days to recover if you even do until the weekend. So what we do is I just tell people to default to an aerobic workout.
Oh, on a day where you might know, you're stressed. Yeah.
You walk in and you know you're stressed at the end of a day, or you woke up the night before, hey, I was going to have a great day. I'm going to have a great workout tomorrow. And then your kid keeps you up 4 out of the 8 hours. You can't go do your normal intense interval workout.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm saying is you can get a good cardio workout in.
Right.
But it won't, the aerobic work will help you reset your whole system that day. So then you can go the next day and maybe get a good interval workout in. Got it. So if you're stressed, and people in this podcast, and when I say this, I'll give you the guidelines. My athletes, my athlete was going to come in and he was going to do let's say an ass kicker. Can I say that stuff on here?
Yeah, man.
Okay, good. Ass kicker workout where his heart rate was going to get to 180 at times and back down, right? Yeah. But I know that they had a stress day, exam week. I do this on exam weeks. I switched to completely aerobic. Why? Because I felt more injuries in our workouts or more injuries on practice in exam week. This has been studied. Brian Mann out of Mizzou, he did they were more likely during midterms to get injured than in football camp. Then in football camp, 2 days. Yeah.
It sounds crazy, but like having gone through it myself, one, you're not sleeping, you're probably dehydrated, right? And stressed. Yeah.
So this is the part of stress that we have to manage. So then what you do, instead of doing that workout, getting your heart rate to 180, 190, you set a guidelines of your aerobic zone, which in most cases for most people would be 120 to 160. Now you can do the same workout, but don't let your heart rate get out of the 160 zone.
Okay.
If you're really stressed, I would recommend drop it to 140. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, and people go, so I wouldn't lift as much. Let me give you this example. I have one workout that's done by a number of NFL strength coaches who they build their aerobic base with this. So they have a lineman that walks in, and the catch is they need to get this guy in shape, but they still want him to lift weights and get strong, but they don't want to make him run miles because that beats him up. Well, here's an example of an aerobic workout while you're weightlifting. Now you can do a weight circuit. You can take your CrossFit, just lighten the load a little bit, wear heart rate monitor, just keep your heart rate under 160. If you're really beat up, keep it under 140. But continuous, you can keep it there the whole time and never stop moving, right? So you can turn it into more of a aerobic base. Because people will ask me, I got in a fight with an exercise physiologist. I had a 50-minute circuit set up with my athletes. They're like, well, that's not aerobic work. They didn't go out and run. I'm like, wait a minute. The heart rate was at 160 beats a minute for 50 minutes on the circuit.
Right.
The heart didn't know you were jogging.
Yeah.
Right? You see what I'm saying? So the cardio, you can get cardio work in the gym as long as you just monitor your heart rate. So now, I guess this NFL workout is pretty simple. It's in my GPP manual, general fitness manual, where an athlete will get on the bench and do 1 rep at 50%. So let's say you squat 400 or you bench 300 and you squat 5. So you use about 50% load. So you put 150 on the bench and you put 250 on the squat. And these linemen will go for 7 minutes. They'll do 1 rep on the bench, 1 rep on the squat. As fast as they can, they go back and forth on 1 reps for 7 minutes. Heart rate gets to 160 during that.
I bet.
So what's the difference of him jogging 7 minutes at 160 or doing that? There is no difference for the heart.
Yeah. Which is what you're trying to train, right?
Which is what you're trying to train. And the cardiopulmonary, you see what I mean? So back to the main point is you walk in, you know your shot, adjust your workout accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
And you get up above 160 doing something, work on your breathing, get it right back down, and go to work. So, 160, and then maybe you let it fall to 140, and then you start your next set, and you go back. You know what I'm saying? So it's just, and here's the deal. When you're stressed and you get into that high, I call it the lactate zone, everyone understands maybe that, you're just beating yourself up so much that you losing the ability to recover and perform well the next day.
So it's so interesting to hear you say that because, and again, like I'm going to mention your background in the intro, but Olympic strength coach at the University of Minnesota. I mean, author of these books. You work at do you work at the men's or the women's Olympic hockey team or both?
The women's Olympic team, national team USA. I do work with them. Yes.
Yeah, and so I think there's like this. It's persisted, but this old school mentality of like you just work through it. Like no matter what, just work through it. Like you just work twice as hard that day. That's actually the day you probably need it more.
Right. I know.
Where what I'm hearing from you and what I've actually found to be true of myself, one, because I'm getting older and like I just have way more stress than I used to. What I'm hearing is like, no, like listen to your body. Like don't beat yourself up unnecessarily. Kind of like live to fight another day almost. I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth.
No, you're not. I mean, that's the thing. Like if you're listening to this podcast and you're a high performer at work, like, you can't beat yourself up so that you make irrational decisions the next day. Do the aerobic work. And I'll be honest with you, as we get older, we lose aerobic capacity. Honestly, that's what we lose, in my opinion.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah. So to me, the aerobic work becomes more important as you get older. All right. And then the aerobic work flushes things out. Like, I mean, you could study the healthy effects of aerobic work. You know what I mean? And here's the deal. When people do the lactate workouts and you got a guy that recovers faster than the guy beside him, it's because his aerobic base is bigger. So your aerobic base, so in our sport, it's the research is coming out now that the team that can run the fastest at the end of the game is the team that wins if most things are equal. Right? It's pretty simple. It makes sense. Why do they run faster? Because they have a larger aerobic base. Yes.
That's interesting. So when you say aerobic base, you mean even in a sport like, I mean, both basketball and soccer are so aerobic. Those are terrible examples.
Yeah. Let's say even football, right?
Yeah.
So the team that's in more fit at the end of the game and can run at the highest levels will most likely. And it's just an indicator that they have a larger base and a better fitness level. Yeah. Right. So that then when they can keep reproducing that effort, it's called repeated sprintability. So your ability to keep repeating that high level effort again and again. And if you don't have an aerobic base, if you don't have a foundation for aerobics, you can't do that again and again.
So when you say build an aerobic base, are we really talking about like what people would think of like something, over 2 minutes, or I guess what's the threshold? It's like over like 45 seconds or to get into like what would you consider like an aerobic workout?
Well, I just consider it, I'll be honest with you, once they get their heart rate above 110, so during this pandemic here, right? Yeah. I have a guy that he was an aerobic freak because he's a martial artist, right? And that's all he does, teach martial arts. And he goes and he was not aerobic freak, but he was a interval freak because that's how he trained. But he goes to do a 6-mile hike with me and his resting heart rate's at 150 during the average. And he's in shape on intervals.
Right.
But he's 48 years old. And it's like, so it was an hour and 45-minute hike up and down hills, but his heart rate was that high. After just 3 weeks of doing that, his heart rate has gone down to about 130 instead of 150. He has a bigger aerobic base, right? So he's just doing those long duration workouts. And actually I can cover how I would optimally do the aerobic workout. Okay.
Yeah, I would love to hear that.
Yeah.
And let me throw this at you too. So I mentioned that I did that decathlon. Two of the events, the 400 meter, which
is a brutal.
Which after my senior year in high school, I promised myself I would never do that again in my life. And I remember why every year when I run it. And then the 500 meter row. So I want to know from you, both on the same day, and I puke every time, but I wanted to hear from you, like, how do you approach that? And I'd be interested, you mentioned like lactate and the lactate threshold. How do you go about training that?
Well, so again, the foundation of that, in my opinion, so that you can repeat those efforts, or you can do what holds lactate off actually is if you have a larger aerobic base, then you won't shift over to lactate as quickly. Okay. So now, I do a couple of things, but you just got to train specifically with that interval. Okay. So let's say you're 400. I've trained some guys who ran it in 44, 48.5. I don't think you ran in that. Am I right?
I think you could probably safely add another 15. 10
okay, just check it. Yeah. Look, man, these guys are world champs in the 400.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, so like, that's a whole different monster, right?
Yeah.
Obviously. I mean, they were wired. Oh boy, Adam and Mitch, they were unbelievable. So anyway, long story. Right. So then you would work on it, training that. And sometimes you would do 20-second sprints. Sometimes you do 40-second sprints. Sometimes you do 60, but and maybe set the pace a little lower. Mm-hmm. But if that's your goal, then you obviously want to work at that interval, and you have to work hard. Okay. Now, a couple things there is that, and I'll be honest with you, 400 meters might be the worst thing in sports. You know what I mean? Because
it's terrible. It's absolutely
because
terrible.
You run so hard, so fast. 800, the intensity's down because you can't keep up. But the 400 meter guys, you're talking about I use this analogy. You're basically trying to turn yourself inside out.
Yeah. Those guys are animals.
Well, same with, at least for this, this time frame. Same with like my Olympic swimmer, David Plummer, won a gold medal in the last Summer Olympics and a bronze. And he's a backstroker in, 50 seconds of turning yourself inside out in those short sprints.
Yeah.
Right. And that's crazy. And you're going, and like he'd get out and he'd be done. You'd watch his heart. You're just like, oh, wow. He's an animal. You know what I mean? So, and that's the thing. And you just do your short interval training and that's good to do, but you still got to practice a skill. One thing that we did, and it would probably help your population here was, so for example, let's say you do a bike, and I just use the bike. Let's say you're going to do intervals for running, but maybe today you're going to train the bike and you're going to go 40 seconds. So you sprint that bike for 40 seconds and then you jump off and you walk around to kind of flush it out. Mm-hmm. Well, the theory is that bike, or let's say when you ran, let's say you're running 40 seconds or biking, it doesn't matter, that you created that lactate, that burn sensation in your legs, right? And we're going to associate with lactate. It might be ammonia, regardless. But people say, okay, you walk around, you flush it out, and then in a couple minutes or 3 or 4, you go again. And if you really want to do it well, you'd wait 2 to 5 minutes, let it clear out. But here's the deal. You want to get better at managing that lactate. So and this is done all across the world where people just get done and they'll walk to move it out. One of the things I came across from a coaching friend of mine, he was like, well, do we really want to get that out of there? Because of the adaptation potential. So you do a spike sprint for 40 seconds or you sprint for 40 seconds. Why flush that out? What you do is you squat down into a deep position and hold that, and you entrap that lactate in your legs. Yeah. So the burn's still in there, and then your muscles start to adapt without doing more exercise.
Interesting.
So if that's your goal, and let's say you're doing CrossFit and you're going to go to your first CrossFit thing and you're doing some leg training and you get that burn, well, maybe in training at some point before the game or before the competition, you entrap that to cause the adaptations at a high level. I actually have an article on it I can send you.
Yeah.
When it's done, if you want to link it to the
I would love to. I put that in the show notes.
You can see how I do it. And then, and like, let's say you're going to go to a CrossFit Games and you want to do this, you would stop that method 4 weeks before the games.
Okay.
You want to do it 4 to 8 weeks away because the adaptation will take place. And then when you pull that method, you have caused large amounts of adaptation to lactate. So then what happens is when you practice the movement 4 weeks before, you get really good because you have more potential to get better at it.
Because you can just handle more lactate in your system.
Yes.
How long? Well, you'll link to the article.
Yeah.
But so that's
and you squat down for 30 to 40 seconds.
Yeah. Okay.
So you get off a bike or you run, and like I have a stadium where I run up a steps for like 15 seconds, over, down, up, and it takes my kids 45 seconds. And when they get up to the top of this second step, I mean, you're a full tilt, like, and then they just squat down against a wall to hold themselves.
Yeah.
And they hold that for 40 more seconds to 45. And then they get up and they walk it around. And then 2 minutes later, 2.5 minutes later, we will go again. And it's really effective. Yeah, it's
that
awesome.
Sounds brutal. Yeah, I'm going to try it.
Yeah. So you'll like it.
I'll let you know how that works out for me.
Yeah,
my wife will be like, she'll be like, why are you bent over in our kitchen right now?
No, I know.
I'm like, well, Cal had me try a lactate adaptation technique.
Right. So then, but the default to the aerobic is honestly your ability to make decisions, your ability to learn motor skill. Like if your heart rate gets too high, about 150, 160, this is when police officers and cops start to lose fine motor skills, and then tunnel vision after that can start. And you're talking, they get to 150 because they're in a situation they're not in normally. And
like a heightened state.
Like, okay, you run. Well, how about this one? You run your 400 meters and then you can do a drill where somebody's reaching in their pocket and they pull something black out, and you might not be able to see that wallet where you might think this is why sometimes these decisions and things happen, because you reach that tunnel vision point.
Yeah.
And the bigger your aerobic base is, and I talk about this in my Triphasic tactical manual, the bigger your aerobic base is, the less likely that's going to happen. Because you hold off. Yes.
So what, and I cut you off there because I started talking about myself again, selfishly.
No, it's fun, but you got experiences. So let's talk about them.
Yeah, absolutely. So someone who wants to build their aerobic base, and you've already kind of said, like, depending on where you are on that scale of elite, like it's going to be a little bit different for everyone. Yeah. But for people who are just like, look, I want to start building my aerobic base. Yeah. What's the right way to try and approach that?
Well, again, to me, it's monitoring your heart rate.
Yeah.
Keeping that heart rate for a long time frame, it can be as simple as 20 minutes, right? To 40 is really good. And some people say, well, I like, and the best way, in my opinion, is do multiple workouts a day. And here's how I would do it, right? I would do a cardio session in the morning and I got elite athletes, but I'll be honest with you. I recommend a fasted cardio in the morning.
All right.
And the reason is
I love this because my wife and I were the episode we just did with Eric Hosmer. She just announced, she's like, I'm doing fasted cardio. That's my goal. So I got to keep her to fasted cardio. So this is perfect timing.
Well, and did she tell you why? Because there's a fat enzyme. It's a fat burning enzyme. It's called AMPK.
Okay. She definitely did not.
Okay. And then, it's linked to longevity. It's linked to a number of things like metabolic diseases. You have low AMPK. You just don't have it, right? Insulin sensitivity. It's a general overall and so that's the aerobic enzyme, and then the alternate to that is the mTOR enzyme. And I'm speaking in really general here. So a scientist, and we could go down different pathways, blah blah blah. But long story short, that mTOR enzyme, the one is a muscle building enzyme, right? And the AMPK is a aerobic base enzyme, and it helps you burn fat. All right.
Yeah.
And if you have a great aerobic base with AMPK enzymes, you can start doing a cardio. And then if you kick in an interval, you'll switch over to burning sugar faster and then switch right back. Okay. So it's that interaction between these two qualities that like, so somebody goes on a walk that's out of shape with me and my heart rate's low, I'm probably burning fat. Yet they go out there and they start burning sugar right away. Okay. So, and your people, your audience can look up the AMPK enzyme and
I can link to some literature.
Right. But here's the deal. I've had great success with this from the highest level athletes to just normal people. If you can get up in the morning, in my opinion, do a 20-minute cardio. And that, I'll be honest with you, some people, it's good enough that they just do a walk.
Yeah.
Their heart rate gets to 110.
Yeah.
Okay. 120.
Yeah.
Fasted. Now, all right, do your fasted cardio in the morning. People that stick with it for about 10 to 15 days, it becomes addicting to them, they say.
So I have been, I guess, I do have experience, so it's worth talking about, but I've been doing that now for a couple years. I love it. I feel awesome.
You feel great.
I feel awesome. And I feel better at work. I think clearer. I have more energy.
100%.
And
now,
I guess,
look, it can be anything. I have a stepper in my house. I'll do a step mill. I go nice and slow. I'll take 2 steps at a time. It can be a bike. It can be a rower. It's just low intensity. And if I feel great, I might kick that up to 140 heart rate, 150. If I don't, I'm at 110 to 120. I still flush things out. I still move blood around, and I still turn that fat burning enzyme on. Now, there's other things to do with that fat burning thing, right? Yeah. And when I say that, like, if you drink a cup of coffee with maybe some MCT oil or coconut oil, it will help switch that on. If you can look up a list of supplements that activate that enzyme, from resveratrol to ALA to various things for like insulin sensitivity, there's a ton that you can also take on top of that.
Oh, wow.
So in the morning, you take a few supplements, right?
Yeah.
Drink your coffee, go for your 20. I'll do right now, because of the virus, I do an hour and 40-minute hike every morning, and that's
awesome.
it. Yeah. And then, like, but nowadays it's usable. When I get back to coaching somebody, it won't happen, right?
Yeah.
But I'll still bang out a 20 to 30-minute cardio session.
Okay.
So if it's as me getting up at 4:30 instead of 5, I do it every day, no matter what, right? Yeah. And then, but here's
so you do it every day?
I'll do it every day because it just keeps me sane. Now, if I'm tired on the weekends, I'll just go for a 20, 30-minute walk. But then after that's done, let's say I finish that at 5 or 6 or 8, you wait 2 hours to eat anything. Why? Because if you take your protein shake at that time, theoretically it downregulates that enzyme.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
So see, I definitely, on most days, I'm not waiting the 2 hours.
Sure. So you wait the 2 hours, and we can get into intermittent fasting a little bit on that too, if you want. So you would wait 2 hours, and then you can have your shake, your meal, because that window is a time frame that enzyme's really activated. Now, it's not like it's on or off, right? It can be depending on the aerobic workout too, but 2 hours is a good time frame. And then you would add your fuel. So I'll have my pro athletes, they'll do that. They take their liquid shake because they get calories in right away then. Yeah. And then they come to the gym and do their intense weightlifting.
Oh, really?
If they want, or another aerobic workout. It depends on what time of the year it is. Yes.
So you've got your elite athletes doing this as well. Now, are they doing it daily as well? Or for them, is it?
Yeah,
no kidding.
Even they found during the season, and some of them are just simple as I get up, I do my treadmill, 20 minutes with my coffee, and I feel better. It helps me recover my tissue. Like you say, you feel great.
Yeah. I'm addicted to it.
You're addicted to it.
The days when I don't do it, I feel off.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not, and let me stop myself there. It's not that I do the fasted cardio. I probably do that like 2 to 3 times a week because I have a full-time job as well. So like I lift the other 4.
Sure.
But it's always in the morning. And if I even like, for whatever reason, maybe on a weekend, I try and lift at like 4 or 3, it throws my routine off and I don't feel right up until that point.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
And like some things I'll do is when I get back, if I'm really hungry, I'll like take a decaf coffee at that point, unless I'm really shitty that day. Then I'll throw a caffeine, and then I put like some coconut oil and I blend it up, and it just coats my stomach. So it like coats a little bit, so then I'm not starving.
Yeah.
It depends. Now, why am I starving? I'll be honest with you. I had a stressful day the day before. I get up in the morning, do that fasted cardio. My stress hormones have been higher.
Yeah.
And I'm more hungry 100% of the time. Why? Because the stress of the day before.
I got a bad habit that I'm going to confess here to everyone listening. So if I've had a couple sleep specialists on because I'm really interested in that. And,
it's important.
Apparently it's pretty important. We're finding out. But I get anxiety, especially when I used to have to commute into New York pre the virus. And I would wake up at like 2 or 3 in the middle of the night. And like one of the only ways I could get myself to like calm back down is like to go eat like a bowl of granola or something. Mm-hmm. And I mean, like looking back, 100% tied to like I was super stressed that week, the day before, so I'll even take it to the next level. I won't have to wait till the morning to start eating. Like sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and be like, well, I'm just going to eat until I
well, you're probably stressed, right? So you're stressed, so you may need to eat, and you've ran out of calories. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think there are times I undereat. Yeah.
Well, one time I found a couple athletes that were having that problem, and when they woke up, I had them do heart rate variability, and their heart rate was way off. And we actually linked it also to allergies.
Oh, no kidding.
So allergies woke them up in the middle of the night, right? Because, and then we started just having to take some Benadryl.
Yeah.
And boom, that stopped.
Was it because it's funny? Because like, was it because his nose gets clogged and like he has trouble breathing?
I think the heat would turn on in that instance, and it just brought the shit. It brought the pollen from outside the house, and boom, there you go.
Yeah. Oh man, you're speaking my language right now.
Right?
These are all things.
So there's variables, you know what I mean? And then honestly, I've got a lot of people that are addicted to that particular protocols that morning. And then in the afternoon, you can do whatever you want. You can do your weightlifting, because weightlifting is just an interval workout. Yeah. Right?
Right. Yeah.
And if it's a heavy weights in the gym, it's a 10-second interval to me. It's the same as a 10-second sprint. I don't care what it is. It's still the same stress, right? The squat is just going to tell you to build up some tissue, right? So, but
that's
as soon as you're done,
think of it.
Yeah, the squat workout or the sprint workout then later in the day, when you get done with that, you do want to get a shake in you pretty quick. You know what I mean? Yeah. You get your carbs and your protein in. That's fine. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah. So, people go, well, but I've been told after the workout to eat something. I'm like, yeah, but not in this case of this fat burning workout in the morning.
Awesome. Well, that's good to know. Yeah. I have a bunch of buddies too, who, one guy, he was actually a guest on one of the earlier shows. He's an ESPN basketball commentator, former player, and he's a big guy and he's trying to lose weight. Yeah. And so I'm kind of picking everyone's brain a little bit about the best way to do that. And I think this is perfect. And I had not heard wait for 2 hours. Yep. And then and some people say, well, what about intermittent fasting? Well, you can fast longer if you want, but here's my thing. If you're a high performer in one of those jobs and you I have found that it doesn't work that well. You can do the 2 hours every day, but intermittent fasting going longer, 4 or even 5, 6 hours every day, it creates more stress hormones. So I would recommend it up to 3 days a week if you're in a job that is stressful and you're training. Does that make sense? That does make sense. Okay. Yeah. Because I think a lot of these things, and I've said this multiple times, like, people see, maybe it's a diet. I always pick on fad diets, right? Right. But it's like, to your point, that creates stress. And like we talked about earlier, like if you are a high performer and then on top of that, you have kids, you have, whatever other stressor in your life, like I'm trying to be much more aware of the fact that compounds and it all is cumulative. You know what I mean? Yeah. Maybe I could enlighten people this way. So for me, here's what happens. I have a rough Monday. I go Tuesday morning, I do my cardio, I wait my 2 hours, I'm starving. Yeah. But let's say Monday was really easy. I go do my cardio on Tuesday morning, I wait my 2 hours, I'm not even hungry yet.
because Monday wasn't stressful. For me, my indicators of my hunger on that next morning is how bad and stressful the day was before. So what I'm saying is, if you're starving, eat after the 2 hours. But if you can push it out.
Yeah, push it out that
2 to 3 days a week, just push it out. You know what I mean?
I like that.
Yeah.
Hey, what do you think about, now that's not true, or correct me if I'm wrong. Is it okay to lift on an empty stomach? So like me, right? Like I have to get my lift in the morning.
Right.
Just
so
by nature of my schedule.
Right. So what I do when I do that is, if I'm going to do it, I'll do a weightlifting, I'll do a lift, but I keep it in the aerobic base. So I don't let my heart rate get up too high. Cause like we said, there's no difference. So I might do a circuit, or I might do a heavy lift, heart rate gets up, and then I do a lighter lift and I just keep going. So it doesn't really matter what exercise it is. Like people don't, I mean, you can do the same lift for hard intervals as you can do if for an aerobic workout, if you just want to drop the weight a little bit or add more reps.
Interesting. Okay.
But
so
now here's the deal. Sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, please.
To answer that question fully is, if you're on an empty stomach, you will not get the most optimal lift. There's no way.
Damn it.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do I need to do? Do I need to pound a little protein?
Protein, carbs, I would say.
Protein and carbs.
Yeah.
You heard it here first, folks.
Well, I'm telling you, if you want to perform at a high level, you better add carbs. Like I've tracked athletes with heart rate variability devices, and all of a sudden they go bad and they're playing professional hockey. And I'm like, what's wrong? And they're paying me literally daily to figure out these problems because I do it remotely. And I'm looking at him going, something's wrong. Something's not right. Like you're not getting enough energy. Like you got to eat more. And he's like, well, my wife started this keto thing and I'm like, you're a professional athlete in the middle of a season. Do not start this diet. Right? I'm not saying it's a bad diet. Like I'm just saying and he's like, yeah, I feel slow. I run out of energy in the game. I'm like, bingo. Like you can't do this right now.
Yeah.
And everyone
the physical demands these guys are put through.
And like everyone that's tried it is like, oh yeah, but I mean, I feel okay. I'm like, but you're not. I don't care what you say. You can't recover. You can't, you know what I mean? So
yeah. No, that's good to know. And I bet you didn't think you were going to come here and talk about stress and diet and fasting with me for
it's the way I think about, though. You have to think about this, right? So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's so cool to hear that you're actually doing that with your elite athletes. That it's not just like, hey, if you're in your 30s and you're trying to, tighten it up a little bit. It's like, no, like this is one of the best things I do for my elite athletes is build out that aerobic capacity. And here's a great way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
One thing I wanted to ask you. So, I've read Triphasic Training. I love it. I just read your book on peaking, which is, it's awesome. And I'm like partway through the bonus area on the plyometrics. So I'm going to dig into that a little bit more. But like, I kept having the thought, because you're not just like a strength and conditioning coach who just runs his own business, right? You work for the University of Minnesota, you work for Team USA. What is it about you that you're totally open to sharing all of this knowledge that a lot of times you've acquired through your own, it sounds like trial and error and question-based solution finding. Like, I'm interested is like, why so open with it?
You only see part of it.
There it is.
Okay. But I do release good stuff. I'll be honest with you. Like, frankly, in my speed manual, I have,
and I started the speed manual also. Those
spring ankle exercises, Chris is out of Chicago. He's a speed coach. And, I've never seen anything like those 5 exercises. I'm not kidding you. You can do them like right now. My athletes are doing them on their steps going up to their bedroom. Yeah. Okay. I'm telling you. And basically the theory is with these 5 exercises is it puts your foot in 5 positions. And we've had elite level coaches email us say, you aren't going to believe my results. And we're talking pretty elite coaches with world-class sprinters, world-class distance runners. And this catch is when your foot strikes the ground, if this foot isn't strong, your brain says I'm on an unstable surface. And then it goes, I have to stabilize. It can't stabilize with a weak foot. It tries to go to the knee and it doesn't work. It locks your hip down. And then your hips become less mobile because every repetition when your foot walks or strikes the ground when you run or train is a bad feedback loop. You will not believe the level of how bad our feet are that I find and the things that it fixes. So we can actually I actually have links. I'll send them. You can put these 5 exercises up for your people.
Oh man, I would love that.
Seriously. Yeah. I'll put those, and we call them the spring ankle. And Chris was like,
and is this different than, cause I watched a couple of videos on ankle rocker.
Yes. And no, these are different, but they go together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Similar, same vein. Okay.
Except the fact that with these spring ankles, we stopped the TV like 50 times during the draft when they were showing receivers run. These positions, they are in these positions. And here's the thing. So your body is not, you have to look at it this, it's wired for survival, not performance. So if my foot comes down on the ground and it collapses because it's weak, it will instantly shut off leg muscles down. It down regulates them so it doesn't ruin your own foot. And you will not believe how many people's limiter is their foot. Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What's the only thing that touches the ground when you run?
Your foot.
There it is, right?
Yeah.
This is how important it is. And I'm telling you, when you try
I don't think I ever trained it once.
I know.
Well, and you know what? And I've had some fantastic coaches. The track coach that I mentioned, I count among them. But
it could be your rate limiter, man. It could be the one thing. And I'm telling you, I'm telling you right now, less than 5 to 10% of my elite athletes didn't, their foot was a room for improvement.
No kidding.
Yes. And I'm talking about, and I'm going to tell you how important it is, and other coaches agree with me, is that all my super freaks, and I coached 12 sports at the University of Minnesota with an assistant at one time. So we got to see world-class kids, super freaks, right? Like amazing.
Yeah. Across a bunch of disciplines.
Yeah. So I wrote, about 12 disciplines. I wrote about 27 programs a month. Different.
All right, we got to talk. Well, after this point, I got to ask you how on earth you do that.
But here's the thing. You sit here and go, the great ones, guess what? There's one thing in common. Most of them have super big feet that were super strong. Now, but here's the catch. But then there was other ones that were freaks and they didn't. It didn't matter if the foot size. It mattered how strong it was.
Yeah.
So when you have children, right? 2 or 3?
I've got 3. Man, I almost lost count.
So when the baby's born, they grab the bottom of the foot to scratch to see if the toe goes like this, right?
Right, yeah.
Well, that's called the Babinski reflex. And with that being said, so when people walk, they've lost that toe flexion. The toe needs to squeeze into the ground and find the ground. But with shoes, it doesn't do that. Every one of my super elite athletes who had big butts, had strong feet, they had big butts. So you break your foot, your butt shrinks when you're in a cast. Why? Because you're not using your glute muscles because you're locked up in the cast.
So that's pretty cool. And the reason people can't see it, but the reason I'm smiling over here is one thing that I got from you, and I even wrote it down, but I'm going to butcher it. You can tell me exactly what I'm referring to. But my lower back was bothering me so bad, maybe 3 years ago, right around the time when I was first introduced to triphasic training. And I'm referring to the book that, like, at that time, putting my son in his crib, I mean, the act of bending over to put him in my crib, like I was like unstable. And it killed me. And my wife is like, what is going on with you? You're like 225 pounds that you can like barely put him in the crib. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And I read your book, and the whole idea of, like, when you do a squat, like dig your toe into the ground, your big toe. Yeah. And that's the idea that like the muscles were firing out of order. And I'm probably doing a terrible job explaining this, but I tried to pay attention to that every time I bent over, every time, whether I was picking a sock up off the ground, anything. And I kid you not. I mean, for the most part, like my back problems went away.
So what happened is you engage that glute into firing, right? So let's say you and I are standing there, and I go to push you. What would happen is your toes grab the ground, which then fires your glute to stabilize you so that I can't push you. If you then grab me and pull me, your toes grab the ground, your glute fires, and then you can pull me. right? So
Yeah.
this glute pattern is the most important thing. So when I say this, I took about 100 athletes and I tested the speed at which they could bench press while they were laying on the ground. And I had them bench a weight without squeezing their glutes. And then I had them bench a weight with squeezing their glutes. And the bar moved faster 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So my point is that if I'm standing there and I go to push you, I actually have to squeeze my glutes to engage everything.
Yeah.
Because I'm not laying on a bench.
Right.
So when I guess
I see what you're saying there. It's like, it's like if you weren't on the bench with that, providing that resistance for you to push off of, you would activate your glutes naturally to be able to do it.
100%. So with everything that you do, in my opinion, and people can play with this. I want somebody to try pull-ups to failure, and then without squeezing your glutes, and then squeeze your glutes and go pull up to failure. And you get more reps. Or do a bridge. Like I tell people, get up in the bridge position, you squeeze your core.
Yeah.
Go to failure. The next day, squeeze your glutes and go to failure. Don't worry about your core. And not one person's ever came back and said, I couldn't do it longer.
No kidding.
Why? Because that's the foundation. Hey, remember when Talton's taught core? What's your core set on? Your hips.
Yeah.
If you get the hips working correctly, the core works exactly how it's supposed to.
Yeah. So this idea of training the foot, okay, we're gonna link to the I'm gonna butcher it. Yeah, but it was called the spring complex or the
spring ankle. Yeah.
Thank you, spring ankle. I don't know why I escaped.
Those are the exercises. It's in my speed manual.
Yeah. So, I'll definitely link to the exercises. What is your thought on training barefoot? Is that something you have your athletes do?
Well, for liability reasons, no, because of like literally at a university, you don't want anybody.
Yeah.
I recommend it. However, like if you're going to do hard sprints, then the big thing is it just depends what you're doing. Like if you're going to do a plyometric and you won't jump as hard without shoes on, I recommend. But like my warm-ups, we do barefoot.
Okay.
Yep. My cool downs, if we do them, we do barefoot.
Yeah.
Basic, like my circuits, when I do circuits in my weight room for aerobic capacity, we do barefoot.
Okay.
Yeah, very important. I like it. Just don't go crazy the first day, kind of build into it. Because again, remember, your feet are so weak.
And shoes today don't help.
Shoes don't help. And they shut that big toe from grabbing the ground because that big toe is what would grab the ground to keep your foot from slipping when you walk.
Right.
Now, here's the deal. Think about what.
Yeah. I see what you're saying there.
What about flip-flops? You lift your toe up to keep the flip-flops on your foot, so it actually shuts that butt muscle off. I've seen it happen. I've checked athletes, and they've completely down-regulated their butt. You don't shut it off, but it down-regulates.
Yeah. That's why the beach bums are always sagging.
Right?
They've just shut the glute off.
Yep. And if you want to wear sandals with a strap on the back so your toe doesn't have to lift up.
So let's keep it up.
Because your toe should squeeze into the ground and then your butt pushes you forward.
Got it. Yeah, I'm telling you, I mean, people are probably sick of me, using my own real life experiences, but like digging the toe into the ground, I've been paying attention to that now for like 2 years, and now I don't have to do it as much. It's just, I feel like it's kind of like rewired. But oh my God, it made such a huge difference.
Well, like, and when people think about it, like my athletes, when they come down on a squat, their toes are up to work with that ankle rocker, as you talked about. But then when they come up, they squeeze those toes hard into the ground. Does that make sense? Yeah. And that's a big deal. Does make sense. And those 5 exercises, those speed ankle or the spring ankle exercises, those 5, I had a friend of mine who I sent them to. I watched his daughter run on video, and she was uncoordinated, tall kid, good motor skills, except running wasn't that great in my opinion. Hand-eye was good. And she did those over the summer. And when she went back to play soccer with her team in the fall, she played soccer in the summer. They were like, what'd you do to her? But think about this. She was long and lanky and her feet were weak. And every time her body stepped on the ground, she was unstable.
Yeah.
She got those feet strong. And it gave her a whole different level of coordination.
Well, and you said something that really resonated too. It's like the body doesn't care about sport. It's about survival.
Survival.
So when it's, when it senses that something's out of balance or it's put in an unstable position, it starts shutting stuff down.
And then
it makes intuitively a lot of sense. And I'm sure you have stuff to back it up, but I'm like,
well, let me tell you this one. Like when an athlete runs and let's say they take a stride and it's shortened. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so many world-class sprint coaches will go, oh yeah, they need to lengthen their stride. So I got to stretch out their hips. It's not actually that 95% of the time. What I found is when their foot goes to slam on the ground, the body will say it's not strong enough to get in far out. So it shortens the stride. Because when I slam down, then I'm more stable when it's underneath me. So a short stride, in my opinion, people think their hips are tight. Well, their hips are tight because they've done repetitive strides that are short, but they're short because the foot, it's the body protecting itself so that the foot, and it doesn't injure itself by doing long strides. It will shorten that stride. So you make that foot strong. And I have ways to do that actually really quickly. And then instantly I don't coach them and the stride gets longer. So I know what the real problem is.
It's kind of one of those things. It's like, and I'm hearing this a lot, the more I talk to folks who work with elite athletes, it's like, what's the right way to say this? Like what you're seeing isn't necessarily reflective of the actual, it's like a symptom. It's not the actual cause, right? Like yes, they might have tight hips. The problem,
foot,
it lies with
the foot locks down the hips.
Yeah.
And the brain goes, I'm not safe by striding that far, so I'll shorten your stride. It's scary.
That's crazy.
I know.
And so you're seeing, I can't wait to start trying this stuff.
Yeah.
That's
Maybe
awesome.
I'll have to come back at some point, right? To start trying.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Please. And I'll tell you how it's working out for me and some of the people who are listening. So one of the things, if you still have time, are you doing okay on time?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you a little bit about triphasic training. But there's one thing that I'm super interested in that I've read about now a few times and I still haven't implemented, and now I'm determined to do it, is oscillatory isometrics. And I apologize if I got that word wrong.
No, that's exactly it. Yeah.
But so I think here's what I would love to do, right? Because not everyone listening here is an elite athlete. There's a lot of people doing things at a really high level. I think people hit plateaus and they have various goals, right? Some people just want to get stronger. Some people want to get faster. Maybe it's CrossFit, whatever it is. Right. Like who is triphasic right for? Like,
I've seen it implemented from 7th graders, lightweight, and it teaches skill and all the way to elite Olympic champions that just need one more year, right? So let's explain what triphasic is. Really, it's if you have 6 weeks of strength training, let's say, and you're going to work on your bench press. Basically, instead of just doing bench for 6 weeks, the first 2 weeks, and you don't have to stay on these 2-week cycles, but the first 2 weeks is basically you take that bench press and you lower it really slow. It's called an eccentric phase. And you are basically taking a phase of that movement and focusing on one specific stressor, which is the eccentric, and then your partner can help you up or you can put it up yourself. It's usually pretty hard because it's heavy. Right. And you do eccentrics for 2 weeks, and whether that's 2 workouts a week or 1, whatever. And then the next week, you're still doing in week 3 and 4, you're still doing bench, but you work on a different strength capacity, which is you bring the bar down close to your chest and you hold it, which is called an isometric for 2 weeks in that workout.
Right.
And isometrics have been shown to be one of the best methods to get strong.
Yeah.
But we rarely train it, right? And you can just hold it for 4 to 6 seconds. And let's say you're going to normally do 6 reps or 10 or 20, whatever, but now you're holding it for 6. So, you may only do 3 or 4, but you're under the bar 18 seconds if you hold it for 3 reps, right? So you're still under the bar. And then the next 2 weeks, you just do normal bench press.
Yeah.
And so where'd I get this from? If you look at every human movement, if I go to throw a football, I eccentrically loaded my arm. There's a brief moment of pause, which is the isometric phase, and then the forward phase. Every movement has 3 phases. I basically broke those movements up into training cycles of 2 weeks, the eccentric, the isometric, and the concentric, just the forward motion.
Yeah.
I broke that movement down. And when I broke that movement down and applied very specific stress, lo and behold, everybody got better at running, throwing. And that was that simple. So that's really triphasic. So whatever program you're doing now, here's the deal. People in your position, I don't want you to try triphasic 6 weeks before you want to do a competition.
Yeah.
Because you're going to still be beat up at the end of those 6 weeks. You're going to go into competition and not get the best results.
Yeah.
You want to do triphasic, that what we just talked about, and have your coaches, if you got a personal trainer, do triphasics week 12 to 6. And then give yourself a good 6 weeks before that competition to get normal. Because here's the deal. You actually may even be better, but it won't show in your sporting event because you have such new qualities and such new tissues that you haven't learned how to optimize them yet. And it'll take 4 to 6 weeks to optimize those new qualities that triphasic do. Yes.
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah. And that does make sense. That does make sense. And I've actually seen tremendous results from doing it. And it's just interesting. It's fun. It adds a variation to a workout that I get like excited about.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Well, and here's one of the big things. Like I can speak hours on just those 2 blocks of what it does. But in this population, here's what I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
Have you seen the grippers that lower blood pressure? Like these grip things. So there's grip things out there that people have high blood pressure and they just do isometric hand grips. And it's been scientifically proven to lower blood pressure. And that's great, right? Because what does is it basically makes the blood pressure vessels more pliable. Well, if you just implement this into your normal gym workout, what do you think's more value? And I would recommend you make sure that you're healthy when you do triphasic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But people that go down into a squat or hold a bench for isometrically on their chest, above their chest, it's a lot better. So my point to you is I literally have athletes resting heart rate drop to like 38 sometimes because their vascular system has become so pliable. Their blood pressure drops. Yes. We're talking, I had an athlete that was like, was he 60 over 85 at one point? Because he was 120 before and he dropped so much. Now then, long story short, the body will reset that to make 120 the new normal. Yeah. But that's the effect it had on the blood vessels and your arteries. And that is a big deal with people that are stressed. So this is why in this population, triphasic has many, many other things that take place. Yeah. And that is one of them. And that's a big health concern, especially somebody that's been always stressed. Those blood vessels become constricted and you develop diabetes, insulin sensitivity, and other things. I'm not saying triphasic will cure that. But
triphasic is diabetes, folks. You heard it here first.
You heard it here first. It will help with your resting heart rate. It will lower. I've found in my elite athletes, we're not doing any cardio and our resting heart rate drops 10 to 12 beats after our isometric phase.
Wow, that's so counterintuitive. Because for anyone who's tried one, it's one of the most taxing things you can do. Right.
But it's really stressful on the vascular system, but it makes it very pliable.
Wow.
And please get in shape before you try it.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. Okay. So isometrics are great. And I was watching a bunch of videos just last night again on the oscillatory isometrics, and I'm so interested to start implementing this.
What it is, honestly, and here's the secret to a lot of my stuff, is I just broke triphasic down and it's very specific stress, right? Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about oscillatories, and this is for everybody listening, is basically when you do a rep, you're going to do a bench press, and you bring the bar down to your chest, and instead of going right back up to the top, you actually go in a 4-inch range of motion up and down multiple times, right?
Like right above the chest.
Right above the chest.
Yeah.
It can be done up high, but the best is right above the chest. And here's why. Because that's your weakest position, okay? So follow me here. Let's say you're going to do a set of 5 on bench, and that would take you 10 seconds.
Okay.
to do full range of motion.
Yeah.
You've only briefly trained that weakest spot on your chest 5 times.
Yeah.
So by doing this oscillatory where you bring the bar down, and let's say you have somebody with a stopwatch stand there, and you move the bar up and down in the weakest position, I've actually had people get 20 reps in the weakest position. Really? And then they press it up. Well, think about it. You don't have to travel that much.
That's what I was interested to see is like, what's it like when I go to actually clear that after doing
you need some help sometimes. Yes.
Yeah.
You need some help. But here's the point. So you did 20 reps in your weakest position versus 5.
Right. It's
more specific stress to your weakest position. Which one's going to get you more adaptations to get stronger? You see, this is what,
I do. And you know what? I wonder if you might find this interesting. So are you familiar with Eddie Hall, who won World's Strongest Man?
Yeah.
And he set the deadlift world record at 500 kilograms or something. Yeah. 1,100 pounds.
Yeah, a lot.
It's a lot for people who are wondering how much that is. What was so interesting to me is he was doing a deadlift workout and he was talking about how training for that attempt, his deadlifts, he would never do full extension. He would kind of train in that limited range of motion for everything on his heavy days. And they were like, well, why would you do that? That kind of goes against everything everyone does. And his reply was, well, I know once I get it past this certain weak point, like I know I'm strong enough to get it up. So I'm not going to waste my energy training there.
Energy. Right. Exactly. And that's what you're doing is, so doing a full rep, you're actually wasting energy for your weakest part. Because like, look, if I can take, let's say somebody can bench 300. But I put 4 boards between these, and now he does a bench press with 4 boards. They can probably get 350, right?
Yeah.
So basically, in a full rep, you're wasting that top range of motion. So this is why the oscillatories are very specific to a specific range of motion, but that's your weakest range of motion. So if you can get your bench press to 330 really quickly by doing them, you should be able to lock it out.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Yeah,
I do. And so where in like within a block, like are you implementing that? Are you having guys do that in every phase, or is it just in the isometric portion of the programming?
I would probably do my regular triphasic, and then I do it after triphasic.
Oh, you do it after triphasic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So go eccentric, isometric, then a concentric.
And then you can throw it in there. Yeah. Or you can throw it in right after the iso phase too.
Okay. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. And if you want to get strong, it's a really good way to get strong in a certain range of motion.
And is it, I know you keep talking about time. Is it 10 seconds? Is it just kind of as much as you can do?
Yeah. Honestly, I've had guys in 5 seconds rip off 12 reps at the bottom, but you're talking super freaks, right? At heavy load. So they can turn their muscles. And that's actually one of the secrets is that some of these elite humans, it wasn't how fast they turn their muscles on. It's how fast they can shut their muscles off.
Yeah. So interesting.
When I first started doing these oscillatories, I had those 2 world champion track kids. When they did oscillatory dumbbell bench with 35 pounds, they first started and they 4-inch range of motion. And when they did the first rep and stopped it, they did it so hard and fast and pulled it down that they came off the bench. So we actually had to put our hands on them to hold them on the bench while they did this.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome.
And that was the Soviets figured that out in about the 60s, was that the most elite people, and here it is, it's just a coordination level, right? Mm-hmm. They turn their muscles off faster. Why? Because then they can refire it quickly again.
Yeah.
And that's key.
Yeah.
And that's really where the peaking concept comes in with the peaking manual. You'll see the muscles turning on and off really fast.
Yeah. Oh man, I loved watching, and I'll link to the book and people can pick it up, and it's pretty cool because it's like multimedia, right? There's, aspects of their traditional book, and then it's presentations, and then it's actual
exercises in there.
It's awesome. And some of the stuff I'm seeing, what's so cool is that it's not all fancy machinery or things that are bands. It's cool.
Right. And then people are asking me like, what do you do with your son? There you have it.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you brought that up. I wanted to ask you about that.
John Wellborn played in the NFL for 12 years. And I got video of his 5-year-old son doing those band exercises. It's not heavy weight, but he's moving his limbs really fast. And you're like, that's the real deal. Now there might be some genetics in there because John was an all pro, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He might have a good base to start from.
But I mean, Cash is the kid's name. He's in there. Like his dad gets up at 6 a.m. and the kid just loses his mind if he can't go work out with dad. So he's like, man, all this band stuff, I was able to like give him stuff to do. And they're moving fast, and it's not heavy weight. But here's the deal. When people look at some of these exercises, and maybe I'll send you a couple that are really good. Like the hamstring one, people are looking at it, they're going, yeah, that looks like it would do something, but how much is it training the muscle? We put machines on the muscle, and it actually activated it more than some of these heavy hamstring exercises. Why? Because the limb's moving so fast, and it has to go stop it, the limb. Right. Your muscles activate very fast then. Yeah. And that's why I think, this is when my son doesn't have to get strong, these are the exercises we do. Like he's just turned 14. So we're focused on gaining weight and getting strong for this summer. But at the end of the summer, I will do those speaking exercises. But he's done a lot of these his whole life. I'm talking, you start these at like 3 years old. I'm not kidding you, 3 years old. They're not going to hurt anything. Just let the kid move faster. Yeah.
Well, it's funny you say that. So, I work out in the morning, like I said, and no matter what we try, like my daughter, who's now 5.5, she's up at 6:30.
Right.
It doesn't matter. Like, we've got her on a pretty early bedtime, but it's like the morning used to be my time to like get my workout and relax. And now I'm like, she's down there with me. I'm like, all right, let's go. And I usually hand her bands and we tie it around something and she'll kind of do what I'm doing, but
do it fast now. Yeah. Do it fast.
Yeah. We're going to take the regulator off.
Look, man, and not that they can't do it slow, but the point is that when you're moving fast, that's learning a skill.
Yeah.
When you move slow, it's not skill learning, right? When you play piano, you don't have to think about how things are moving, right? It just happens, or the way I speak, the words coming out of my mouth. When you move things fast, that's sports, and that is skill learning, especially for these young kids.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Well, and one of the things that, I've become more aware of, and I'm trying to help educate people, because like I said, a lot of people who listen write to me and they're like, hey, my son's 12.
Yeah.
What should you do? And I'm like, well, first of all, I'm not a trainer, so let me stop you there. But I'll try and point you in the direction to people who do know what they're talking about. And it's this. There's this old notion that you want to get faster, like squat heavy, right? And you're talking. What you're saying here is like it's about like coordination. It's about like speed, skill acquisition.
Yeah, like I'll be honest. Some of the things I did with my kids was like I bought a ping pong table, and when my kids were young, I would set it up so that it was half a ping pong table, and I put sides. And it wasn't about playing ping pong; it was just about seeing how many reps they could get. Right, hand-eye coordination. Because look, I've had athletes that are super strong, powerful, and speedy, but can't coordinate, and they just can't play the game. But I've had highly coordinated kids. I can get them strong. That's easy because they can learn that skill very fast, right? The one thing and my son is a fast kid. His mom's an Olympic champion. That helps, right? So, yeah.
Well, and I was doing some research prior to this. You weren't actually too bad of an athlete yourself.
Yeah, I was okay. I was a two-sport college athlete. I ended up being an All-American. But, the big thing is with this is like, so for example, like I need to get good quality reps. And then with my son, and you know what, I wrote an article for literally for parents. I can link this for you. Okay. I'll send you.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
I would love to.
And basically I was like, all right, I need to get 6 speed reps in every day. So basically what I did was my son would go out and I'd show him a pass pattern and I'd throw the football. And I found out that if I threw the football a little far, he actually ran faster. And then he would come, he'd grab the football, he'd come back and tell me how bad of a quarterback I was. And then we'd play like left-handed catch for 2 minutes. And people ask me, why 2 minutes? Well, he could recover fully. And then he ran another repetition. But when we went out and played, we did this for 12 minutes, or actually 10, because you can get 6 reps in your first 10 minutes. And then after that, we did whatever we wanted. Like I would even have those reps run up a hill while I threw the ball. So he got hill running. He got straight ahead running. He got cone agility running, and then I throw the ball.
Yeah.
And my thing is, people ask me, what's the best exercise? It's running. This is what we were wired to do. Because if I only had one exercise, I could run uphill, I could run with resistance, I could run cone drills, stopping and starting. I can run different ways. And I'll send this article why you do
please.
it. And actually, I don't want to tell you, but like I can't say the team that I worked with, but they restructured NHL teams and some NFL teams restructured practice along these guidelines.
No kidding.
Yeah, but it's
I can't wait to read that.
I'll send it to you. Okay.
Yeah. That sounds great.
Yeah, for sure. And it'll just be something, and maybe you get tons of questions and you have me back on at some point.
Oh man, I would love that. Well, one of the things I wanted to do with this podcast is, there's people like yourself who are doing really incredible things, and you're working with elite athletes, and thankfully you share it and you try and make it as accessible as possible. One of my big pain points has always been, and I think this is just, a little bit of my own chip on my own shoulder, is there's people who are willing to put in the work and effort, but might not have the resources to get the most out of it. And so, I wanted to help introduce people to like new ideas, different approaches. I would argue that yours is a more effective approach. I mean, obviously I'm a huge fan of it. So it's like for people who are willing to put in the time to get better, or have a kid that just is like, you can't get them off the field, you can't get them out of the gym, they just want to train. Like let's get them the right information.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? I mean, like my daughter, she's sports aren't her thing, right? Mm-hmm. I think she has talent, but you're just like, she just doesn't have that will. Like her thing is she wants to compete in the classroom.
Okay.
She's got drive, but it's to get A's. And she would look at sports and be like, But then my son is a whole different ball game. I tell people this story real quick. It's like, we're at a swim meet, and my daughter was at her swim meet, and she got second place. She looked up, she improved her time. She was so happy. And I look over to my right, and my son's 5 at the time. He's crying because his sister got second place, right? And she's so happy. And that's just the difference in how they were wired.
Yeah. I love that.
Right. And it was both a great day for her. It was horrible for him. But I mean, she got her best time ever to date. Right. And then, and she got second place. She was on the podium. It was celebration. He was crying because his sister got second place. That is so perfect. Yeah. Right. I mean, that's pretty typical. And that can be switched, right? It can be the boy that's more interested in girl, vice versa. But like, this is what parents, like if they're interested, and people say, oh, did you train him all the time? I'm like, we trained all the time, but it was sports. Like that's what I did. I threw that football game. I did all that stuff. Like I did that every day for the summer one year, every day. Yeah. And people say you can't run full speed every day. The only thing that happened to him was he got a lot faster. There was a couple days he's like, it was raining. We didn't do it, or we couldn't go out because he was playing lacrosse or something. Like, so it's not like we did it every day, but every day we were available. We went out and we'd do it. We'd have fun. Yeah. No,
and I think that's a good, I had a buddy of mine, and we can wrap up on this because I know I've taken up a lot of your time and I appreciate it. A buddy of mine who, was talking to a neighbor, and he was like, I'm thinking about sending my kid to this camp, and I don't know what's too much, and I played college football. My buddy was asking me about this, and I was like, look, if you have a kid that like loves it so much that you have to pull them away, like there might not be a thing as too much, right? And like I count myself in that category. As a kid, like, I mean, I would have begged to spend all my time out there training. But the other kid, if you have to force them,
it's not,
or don't do it.
Don't do it. It's not
right.
And kids, I've seen it change in kids. Like a kid at 12, all of a sudden something clicks. One of my son's friends, and boom, this kid wants to go. You know what I mean? Some kids have it when they're 5.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And if my theory too is like, make sure the kid has a great experience, because I'll be honest with you, if it's fun, there's no way a kid's is gonna burn out. Yeah. Let's be honest.
No, you're right.
If I have a bad coach, and some of these sports where there's burnout, right? They get these dictatorial coaches, like in girls gymnastics, who are, in my opinion, sometimes they can. I'm not saying they're all bad, right? But sometimes
but I can imagine. Yeah, I'm like envisioning the environment after all these documentaries I've seen.
Yeah, right. It's the same thing, right? And you're just going. And I don't want to pick on them, but like, it's just a good example. And you're going, oh, like that's horrible. Like, this girl's dreams and passion was crushed by a coach like that.
Stole the joy of the game.
Right. And then the kid burned. They say, well, burnout wasn't going to make it. Well, in that situation, it might not have been. And look, I've had parents come to me, our daughter was pretty elite level, great coaches, and just decided didn't want to do it. I'm like, well, look, and she got to a pretty elite level, but then decided at 16, said, I don't want to do it anymore. And it's like, well, at least you know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But she's put in work and she knows how to get to a high level. And that was like 6 years ago. Guess what? Going to law school, going to crush it.
Right.
She built work ethic. Like, these are all life lessons.
Yeah, it's transferable. Absolutely.
That's my thing, right? And sports are so good at teaching life lessons. And look, they're not that important. Let's be honest. People think I have an important job. Like, I train entertainers, right? Well, let's be honest. Like,
I appreciate that perspective,
right?
Because people put them up on a pedestal, and it's amazing, and I love it. I count myself in the category of people who love it. Right? No, this is great.
I mean, I sit here and people. I mean, you may have. I'm not going to pick on anybody's name, but you have a basketball player that thinks he's amazing and he's got 25 million Instagram followers or something. And I'm like, you entertain people is all. You're an entertainer. I'm like, I have friends who are in the special forces who've done 10 tours. And when they go to work, they may not come back.
Yeah.
Like, that's for real. You're a cop. You may get involved in an incident where you may not come home.
Right. Right.
And we can all die at any time, maybe driving to work, right? I mean, it's a possibility. But like, you hold yourself in such high regard, and you're truly no different than the guy at Circus Olay, right? We entertain people. And look, I'm below all of them. I coach entertainers, in my opinion, right? Like, let's be frank. But I love what I do. So, and you love what you do, and you go, okay, as an entertainer, as a basketball player or Circus Soleil, we're still just entertainers in the end of the day. Look at our frontline workers right now who are in the hospitals with blood marks on their face from wearing masks for 16 hours.
Yeah, putting it all on the line.
That's a big deal. I mean, people on my campus two blocks away are trying to find a cure for childhood cancer in some form. And hundreds of people a month email me, and I teach people to lift dumbbells, right? Like, let's put it in perspective. No, I get it. Well, and it's funny too. I've had this conversation. It's like, you think about something like basketball. It's like, if you were born 120 years ago, this didn't exist. It's a made up game. But yet we hold them in such high regard, and you're just going, guys, like, look, let's just put it in perspective. We're entertainers in the sports business, and it's great, and we love it, but we're just entertainers at the end of the day.
Well, I think a lot of people will find that perspective probably pretty refreshing. Yeah, because I honestly, I don't know how like typical that perspective is of someone, to be fair, of your stature within that community. So,
thanks.
I think people will enjoy that for sure. Yeah,
well, I mean, we are who we are.
Yeah. Well, Cal, man, I can't thank you enough. This has been awesome. I have a whole list of questions that like I said, I could ask you all day, but we'll definitely have you back if you're willing. I know people are going to get a ton out of this one. I do a segment at the end where I do key takeaways, and I think you're going to make it pretty tough for me to narrow it down to a couple, because this one was pretty awesome.
Awesome. Glad you liked it, and I'll be back.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it. All right. Thanks, Cal.